All right, let's jump right into this explainer and completely demystify the somewhat abstract threat of hacking. Today, we're unpacking exactly how your digital life actually gets compromised. Look, we hear about cybersecurity threats all the time, right? But it usually feels like this invisible, super technical danger that only happens to, well, other people. But today, we're going to break down the real-world mechanics of password theft step by step.
We've got to start with a truly staggering fact. Billions of passwords are stolen every single year. Billions. This isn't just a niche problem for tech companies. If you have an email address, a bank account, or honestly just a social media profile, you are actively in the crosshairs here. But to really understand how to protect yourself, we first have to unlearn pretty much everything pop culture has ever taught us about hacking.
I mean, most people picture hackers as these solitary geniuses, sitting in a dark room in a hoodie, furiously typing green text to breach some complex mainframe in real time. But the unsettling reality? It's so much more boring, yet so much more efficient. It's heavily automated bots doing all the heavy lifting, while the attacker is probably just kicking back with a coffee. Real-world hackers aren't guessing your passwords through sheer intuition. They're running relentless automated scripts and using incredibly simple psychological tricks to just bypass the digital locks you've set up.
So here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we'll debunk that Hollywood hacker myth. Then, we'll dive into how passwords actually get stolen. After that, we'll take a peek behind the curtain at password hashing, examine some real-world password heists, and finally, wrap up with exactly how to defend your digital life.
Okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty, how passwords actually get stolen.
First up is phishing, which is without a doubt the single most common attack vector out there. And what's really terrifying about phishing is that it relies almost entirely on human error, our psychology, rather than some crazy technical exploit. You know the drill. You get a super urgent sounding email, you click the link in a panic, and you're taken to a login page that looks completely identical to Google or your bank or Netflix. You type your password in, thinking you're just logging into your account, but nope, you literally just handed the keys to your digital house straight to an attacker.
Next up is credential stuffing. Now be honest, have you ever reused a password across 2 different sites? Yeah, most of us have at some point. And that's exactly what credential stuffing exploits. Hackers take huge lists of millions of leaked passwords from some old, forgotten forum breach, and they use bots to simply stuff those credentials into major banking and email sites today. If your password was compromised anywhere in the past, bots are automatically testing it on your most critical accounts right now. Then we have the more brute math approaches, brute force versus dictionary attacks. Think of brute force like someone trying every single possible key combination to open a lock. It's incredibly slow and highly ineffective against really long passwords, but it's devastatingly quick against short ones. Dictionary attacks, on the other hand, are a bit smarter. They try the obvious keys first. Instead of random gibberish, the software rapid-fires common words, phrases, and previously known passwords. If your password is password123 or your dog's name, forget about it taking days to crack. It's cracked in literally the first second.
Now, if an attacker can't trick you and their bots can't guess it, they simply watch you. Keyloggers are malicious software that infects your computer and covertly records every single keystroke you make. As you're typing your password into a perfectly legitimate, secure website, that malware is silently logging those characters in the background and firing them off to a remote attacker.
And we absolutely cannot forget man-in-the-middle attacks. Picture this. You're at a coffee shop or waiting at an airport, and you connect to their free, unsecured public Wi-Fi. Well, without proper encryption, an attacker sitting right there on that same network can actually intercept the communication flowing between your phone and the website you're visiting. They can just snag your credentials right out of thin air while you're waiting for your latte. All right, let's shift gears for a second and go behind the scenes to talk about password hashing.
When you set up an account, responsible companies don't just save your password as plain text in a spreadsheet. That would be a disaster. Instead, they add a totally random, unique value to it, which the industry calls salt, and then they mathematically scramble the whole thing into an unrecognizable string of characters called a hash. This is absolutely crucial because it renders a hacker's massive, pre-computed cracking tools completely useless. So even if a company's database gets totally breached, the attackers don't get your actual password, they just get a scrambled mess of math.
Which brings us to our next point, real-world password heists. How does all this theory actually play out?
Well, looking at some major historical events brilliantly illustrates that absolutely no one is immune to this. Back in 2012, we saw massive corporate databases get completely dumped, like the huge LinkedIn breach. In 2020, Twitter suffered a massive, highly public hack, not through complex coding, but via simple social engineering of their own internal employees. And fast forward to 2021, the Colonial Pipeline ransomware attack. This was an event that quite literally disrupted fuel supplies across the entire US East Coast. And how did it start? With just one single compromised VPN password.
To put the sheer scale of these things into perspective, that 2012 LinkedIn breach I mentioned, that alone exposed a staggering 117 million passwords to the wild. That is 117 million users whose data was suddenly just out there, ready to be immediately weaponized by hackers in those automated credential stuffing attacks we talked about earlier.
And look, this matters today because a password exposed in a 2018 breach can absolutely still be used against you right now if you haven't changed it. There's a fantastic free tool called Have I Been Pwned, that's spelled P-W-N-E-D. You just type in your email address and it will immediately tell you exactly which historical data breaches your information has appeared in. Seriously, checking this is your vital first step to taking back control of your digital footprint.
So, let's talk about the most important part, defending your digital life.
Your personal security checklist really boils down to this core 4-part strategy. First, you have to create totally unique passwords for every single site you use. That way, if one gets breached, all your other accounts stay completely safe. Second, because human memory simply wasn't designed to handle 100 different 16-character passwords, use a reliable password manager to do the heavy lifting for you. Third, enable two-factor authentication on literally everything you can. And fourth, start adopting phishing-resistant passkeys wherever they're offered. But wait, a really quick warning on two-factor authentication, or 2FA. Not all 2FA is created equal. When you're setting it up, always choose authenticator apps over SMS text messages. Why? Well, because of a frankly terrifying attack called SIM swapping. Attackers can actually just call up your mobile carrier, pretend to be you, and port your phone number over to their own device. Suddenly, they're the ones getting your security text messages. Authenticator apps, on the other hand, generate the security code locally, right there on your specific physical device, making them significantly safer.
And looking slightly into the future, we have passkeys. This is a real game changer. It's the emerging, highly secure standard that is eventually going to replace passwords entirely. Instead of a string of text that you have to memorize or type out, passkeys use local cryptographic key pairs. Basically, your device holds a private key that never ever leaves your phone or laptop, the website holds a public key, and they mathematically shake hands to log you in. There are 0 passwords for you to remember, and literally nothing for a fake phishing site to steal.
At the end of the day, your security starts with actually understanding the threat. So you really have to ask yourself, is your digital life secure right now? Have you taken the basic steps to lock down your digital vault, or are you essentially leaving the front door wide open? Take 5 minutes today. Check your email on Have I Been Pwned, set up a solid password manager, and take back your digital footprint. Because think about it. If a hacker came looking for your data tonight, how hard would you actually